Welcome to the Political Parties podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about political parties, both the major ones, third parties, and also share some statistics with you. A political party is a group of people with similar ideologies who work together to influence public policy through electing candidates. Now, being a member of a political party gives people more influence and helps them to get elected. There are two major political parties, and this is the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Each party has a party platform, and the platform is just a document that describes their points of view on major issues. It does not mean that every Democrat agrees with everything on the platform and every Republican agrees with everything on their platform, but they tend to agree on most of the things on the platform. And so Democrats agree with things that tend to be more liberal and Republicans more conservative. So it's those kind of issues that they're going to support. Political parties, by their nature, are biased towards their points of view. And this makes things quite divided in our country. This has gotten to the point that people are really fed up with political parties because they see the parties as very divisive and they see the politicians as really only looking to support what their parties say. And so you can see here that there used to be a lot more people who considered themselves either Democrats or Republicans. And now 40% of American citizens consider themselves independents, which means they're not a member of a political party. And there's a lot of critiquing that goes on of the political parties because it's really hard to get things done when the political parties disagree so much with each other, and they're really have in recent years been unwilling to make as many compromises and work together. And so they used to be more towards the middle or at least compromise, and they don't really do that anymore. And so, again, this political cartoon shows that people are becoming independents because the political parties are busy mudslinging or insulting each other, and people just don't like that. So you can see here in this graph that people have quite unfavorable views of both the parties and have really done so for a while now. So you can see that their favorability rating of the Republican Party is currently at 42%, and their favorability rating of Democrats is currently at 47%. So even though Republicans like their party and Democrats like their party, there's still a lot of people who just are fed up with parties in general. And so historically, independents are the people who decide elections because they're not the people who are just going to always vote for Democrats or always vote for Republicans. And they tend to be more towards the middle of the political spectrum. And we call them swing voters because there's so many of them that the way that independents vote can swing an election either towards Democrats or Republicans. And so it's really trying to convince these independents to vote for your party that will win the election. Right now, we're in the middle of a presidential campaign. Election day is coming up, and our candidates for office are Donald Trump. He's the incumbent, meaning he is currently in office, and Joe Biden, who was vice president for 8 years. Trump is a Republican, and Biden is a Democrat. Going back to 4 years ago in our most recent presidential election, although Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton had the lowest popularity rates that we've seen in a long time. People didn't really like them that much. They still voted for them as opposed to other candidates. And that's because it's really hard to win an election if you're not a member of the Democratic or Republican Party. But you can also see there were lots of adults who actually did not vote. We have a two-party system in our country, meaning that it's a winner-takes-all kind of system. It means if you get the plurality of votes, which means more votes than the other candidate, you are going to win. And so it's really hard for smaller parties to gain the momentum to actually win an election. So people don't want to vote for a third party often because they feel like they're just throwing their vote away since either a Democrat or Republican is going to win. And that's because all of the media goes to those two major candidates as well. And so the reason that this shows a unicorn as the third party is because third party is really, in terms of representation, don't really exist. But a lot of people do think that we need a third party. 71% of millennials think that way because they have negative views of the Democratic and Republican Party. And so the problem is that it's having a third party would be nice, but it's just so difficult for a party to rise up and get the attention and get the funding that it would need to really be competitive in an election. What a third party is any party that's not Democrat or Republican, meaning that it might be the fourth most popular party or the 10th most popular party, but it's just known as a third party because any party is an alternative to the Democratic and Republican parties. And so the most common parties that we hear about are the Green Party and the Libertarian Party. The Green runs a lot more liberal, and the Libertarian Party really calls for more economic freedom and also some more social freedom as well. And so it's a little more to the right, but it doesn't really fall onto the spectrum as well as the other parties do. There are other third parties. There are tons of them. So I've just listed some: the Communist Party, the Socialist Party, there's even the Pirates Party, and then there's some more conservative ones like the Conservative Party or the Constitution Party. In 2012 and 2016, candidates from third parties did actually receive 4% of the vote, which is a lot more than they had in the election before that, but still 4% of the vote wasn't enough to really sway the election one way or the other. People tend to vote for third parties more often at the state level. So in 2016, you see that 9% of voters nationwide, including more state level elections, did vote for third party candidates. But still, it was not really enough to get a lot of third party candidates elected. This means that there is no third party representation in Congress. Occasionally you do get a senator or a representative who is an independent, not a member of the Democratic or Republican parties, but currently we don't have any.